17 detention facilities. In preparing recommendations, the subcommittees
Can you hear us now?
Josh, are you able to hear us?
Yes, I can hear you now.
Great. Okay. Well, you missed my whole spiel of introduction of you and how great you are. But we're ready to turn it over to you. And then if you just want to let me know when you're ready to change the slides, just tell me to pass to the next one. Okay.
Very good. Very good. Thank you. Also to the group, I want to say thanks for allowing me the opportunity to be a part and present this component today. So my name is Joshua Nichols. I'm the president of the Indiana Juvenile Detention Association, and I'm the executive director of a juvenile detention center here in Evansville. So when the survey was initially distributed, and you'll notice that you can go to the next slide, Nancy. There's always a variety of perspectives that we have to look at. And certainly this survey that was sent out did show that there was a variety of perspectives and approaches that were currently taking place in the different juvenile detention centers across the state. Now, as we get that and you begin to see people's opinions, you notice that not all facilities are fully supportive of change and change in general. Generally, with this one, due to the concerns of time constraint and staffing. But nearly 98% of the facilities that we surveyed recognize the importance of maintaining family contact while their child was in detention. And we see and support wholeheartedly the idea of trying as best as we can to keep a family unit together, intact, conversing with one another, meeting with one another, and being able to just have the bond that is necessary for them as they work their way through this process. Nancy, you can go on to the next slide if you'd like. So when we talk to the different facilities and the different directors or directors of operations that were involved, we had a 98% response of the facilities in some form or another, either via the initial web form or web survey that went out or via telephone. Myself and my assistant made calls to some of the non-responding centers, and then we did respond with a call at the same time, asking them follow-up questions in regards to their responses, such as did they have any concerns regarding fiscal impact should something like this be attached to legislation. And the overall response to that was no, that they didn't have a particular concern regarding fiscal impact. So a lot of the centers are currently in line with the Article 8 standard on visitation, and they're in that space right now. And as I mentioned, they didn't anticipate any fiscal impact, but the concerns that were voiced in regards to staffing and timing. Did they have the ability to manage it within a time frame? And the great news with it is that the facilities are already equipped to manage visitation to meet compliance standards with 210 IAC Article 8. So I think the largest concern among the group was the number of visits per week and a duration of time for the visit. But that just led to staffing impact. But what I can tell you is that the commitment from the IJDA and the centers that we have is this. We will work with the juvenile detention centers across the state to implement any new legislative practices that come into effect into our facilities, and even from the private facilities such as mine or county facilities, to help them understand the process and work with them through it so that they can be a smooth transition. We're also willing to serve as a liaison through the legislative process, and again, continue to collect data and speak with the detention center directors across the state to order to share the vision and the thoughts of this particular group to the juvenile detention centers that we'll be working with across the state, just to make sure that, one, we want to make sure that everybody is being able to have access to their families at one of the most vulnerable and critical times of their lives. And that gives us the ability to continue to work together to bond, if you will, the child with the family in a center such as mine, and being able to find ways to connect them and help grow the family unit. So that is my portion of this. I thank you for your time today, and appreciate any questions you may have later on.
Anything to add, Nancy?
No, thank you. We do have a recommendation. The ask is the same as it was last time, that the commission support conceptually any legislation, not any legislation, but legislation that would establish minimum requirements for family access.
Questions from the group for either Joshua or Nancy today?
Thank you, Judge. Joshua, thank you for being here today. Appreciate the work that you've done and reporting to the commission here. My question is on a different topic, and Josh, I thought I would ask you why you've joined us today.
Sure.
Do your members have capacity issues at the juvenile detention centers?
I think it would depend on center by center. I am currently working with a couple of counties, one particular county at the moment, on opening their own center because they are having difficulty in finding placements. So I think to give it an answer that is straightforward, I couldn't do. I do know that most centers are running full. My capacity is 40 at my particular, at my center, and my population is at 37 total today. But all my beds are contracted for. So, I mean, I wouldn't be able to lend a hand with any other county in the process. And my feeling is that most of the counties are in that spot as well. Some counties are only seeing placements from other counties. And that's where and those actually honestly were the ones who had a particular issue with this particular form of legislation that we're discussing today.
Thank you, Joshua.
My pleasure. Thank you.
On that same note, is it possible then to get a list of total bed capacity versus the number of those that are in the counties and across the state?
I can answer that, Josh, at least part of it. The Department of Correction Division of Youth Services maintains a list on their website of all the detention facilities and their capacities, so that counties can reach out if they don't have a bed in their own county. In terms of the capacities, that would change not only daily, but potentially hourly. I can tell you that the Youth Justice Oversight Committee Data Work Group is interested in getting a kind of live count that we would be able to do that. Currently, though, without reaching out every few hours, I don't think that we could get that information.
Okay, so, and I know these are countywide, but I think we have 3 state facilities, if not as well. Do you engage with them as well? I mean, I guess as far as the numbers and the capacity availability?
The Department of Correction was holding some young people they couldn't find a bed otherwise, but they don't do that anymore. They have declined. They are no longer engaging in that as of February-ish. Is that right, Alenia?
Okay, thanks.
Mhm.
Other questions from the group? We have a recommendation from the task force here. Do we have a motion to approve that recommendation?
Move to approve.
Thank you, Bernice. Do we have a second? Thank you. We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor of approving the recommendation, say aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. All right. Thank you, Nancy, and thank
Thank
you,
you.
Joshua.
Well, my pleasure. Thank you.
All right, moving on to our next agenda item. It's strategic planning update. I know many of you were here for strategic planning and participated in that event. So we have with us today Patrick Freeland from the Forum for Youth Investment to present on that process and next steps. Mark, do you want to say anything first? All right, do we have Patrick online?
I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yes.
All right. Well, good morning, everyone. I'm Patrick Freeland, the Director of Statewide Quality Improvement Systems with the Forum for Youth Investment. The Forum for Youth Investment's an action tank in DC, and we work with national, state, and local leaders in more than 45 states. And our mission is to allow children and youth to reach their full potential in work, school, and life. And we do that by norming policies, partnerships, and continuous quality improvement system processes that promote positive youth development. I came to be with you all back on the 23rd as part of a follow-up to some work that we are concurrently doing with Sisk and Mark and Blaine and the team regarding addressing chronic absenteeism. So Mark asked me to come in and simply support some of the processes related to your strategic plan. So I'm just going to go over those briefly with you before handing it back over to Mark and his team to talk about next steps. Next slide. So this is just a summary slide to reflect the 5 current goals that you all are working on as part of your strategic plan. You can go to the next slide, please. And on the 23rd, the main purpose was to bring everyone together, further deepen a shared understanding of those 5 goals, clarify Sisk's unique role in those goals and what their role is not as well, and to just further establish, go deep on getting baselines, metrics, targets, and more. So what we did that day, we started off in the morning with a gallery walk around the 5 goals, clarifying the unique role that Sisk provides. In the afternoon, we then really dived deeply into looking at those goals, identifying additional measures of success, targets, timelines, leverage points that you all have as a Sisk and being built into the legislation. Goal 5 that is dealing with the reduction of bullying and suicide, et cetera, was also a newer goal that had been added to one of the work groups. And so that small group spent more time really just going deep into thinking through what do we need to set this up strategically as part of the Sisk to take action and create outcomes. Next slide. When I went back and looked at all the different groups' notes, all the documents across the 5 goals, when we looked at really the common themes that emerged, these things came to be. So the first one was centering youth voice. It was very clear as part of how you all are structured in the state of Indiana that that was of course, meaningful to be able to utilize people with lived experiences and to allow their voices to shape this process. So that was the first thing that I saw. And then part of the desire for what the CISC would not do is to duplicate roles and responsibilities that might be better suited for other partners that are legislatively required to be part of that process. And so it's really just balancing the right amount of efforts and building bridges with those systems. The third thing that was very clear, and all the groups talked about this, was the need to continue to gather relevant, current, and meaningful data that would saliently focus what we could change and what we can plan to go deep down on. And then where are we starting with that data in terms of baseline? So the groups made progress. I think the idea here was not to try to flush out an entirety of where this plan is, but to take it to the next step and the next level. And certainly looking at the data was part of that. And then the last thing was to also just kind of talk about additional ways that we can non-punitively and from a more equity-based approach, change policies that support families. We know that, for example, with chronic absenteeism, one of those opportunities is to not penalize that family before we reach out and see what's going on with that family and their specific needs. And so that was themed throughout the 5 different goal groups, is how can we continue to not have a punitive process necessarily to engage people, but to attract them through other measures. So outside of that, we did a little bit of celebrating as well on some of the successes that you all have had over the past year in terms of passing bills. And we also spent some time team building. So I felt it was a great first day of that work. And in terms of next steps, the next slide, I'll hand it over to Mark to talk about what his plans are. Thank you all.
All right, and again, thanks to our partners at the Forum for Youth Investment. You may have heard of them before. They're working on our chronic absenteeism focus area as well, but them being able to come in and really give that neutral support to our work was vital there. So next steps, we are just going into, that was about step 2 of the process. So we have lots of steps left before we get final, which the goal for that will be at our December meeting. But next up, we'll be taking some of the early information that we got from that strategic planning session, turn it into draft objectives from what we heard from those that participate there. And then that will be circulated in 2 ways. One, through a survey that will go out through all of our members, stakeholders, and affiliates, and will be publicly posted as well for feedback. And then we'll also go back to the task forces that were part of that discussion to help shore it up and get it where we have definable, measurable objectives. So we can really, I think that's one of the things we've heard a lot from our task forces is we need to know when we can check the box that we've accomplished that objective. And sometimes they haven't been written away that really allowed them to do that. So we're going to get a little tighter on that. And then after that is done, we'll get it into a draft form. There'll be, this is what we're looking at recommending moving forward. Again, that will be posted out publicly as well as get circulated to all the commission members before our December meeting. At the December meeting, hopefully we're in good shape to say, we've got it, we got what we're looking for. Let's vote and get this locked in, noting that as a plan for the next 3 years. So that's why we take a lot of steps in this process to make sure we get it right. We do know so far, it looks like our major goal areas that really define which task forces we have. There was no discussion about saying there's some of those we don't need anymore, or ones that we need to look at adding to that. Does definitely conclude that we're going to formalize within the next strategic plan the online safety, bullying prevention, and suicide prevention components that we brought in kind of midterm this time. But that will give us 5 solid task forces. Also, a big part of the discussion was we need to make sure everything is youth and family voices informed, everything is data informed. So just to note, that is where we have our committees, which are kind of available as resources to all of the task forces. So when we get a recommendation moving along, we make sure, hey, if it's got a family and youth voice component to it, which pretty much all of them should, and it has a data component to it, which pretty much all of them should. That's when we dip into those committees to say, take a look, is this data looking right? Are there more data needs? Do we have the right voices attached to it? Have we talked to the people we should be talking to? And then that becomes the recommendation after it's been vetted through that channel as well. So really just making sure we're owning all the things we've talked about over the last few years and getting it locked into our strategic plan moving forward. So hopefully you're all seeing previews of that pretty soon. So my goal is that by late November, we have that draft plan together for you. So you have time to review it before our next meeting in early December, at least a couple of weeks ahead of that. So you can look into that and see if we've got any more fine tuning to do on some of the language. That's especially anything that could become an agency role. We want to make sure, does this make sense for the agency to be able to do this and help create some outcomes out of the objectives along that track. So be watching for all that. But otherwise, you'll see a lot of updates and emails from myself, Blaine, and others on the team as we're getting that a little bit more shored up for you.
Questions for Mark? Very quiet group today. All right, then we will move along to our next agenda item, which is a presentation from Department of Child Services Older Youth Initiatives. And we have Anissa Evans Tucker with us today.
Hello, hi, everyone. Thank you for inviting me to talk about older youth services with the Indiana Department of Child Services. I also want to take time to lift up our young people in the room. Thank you for being here and utilizing your voice to help advocate for older youth across the state. I'm here today to talk about older youth services or working with older youth in the state of Indiana. That can be looked at two ways when we're thinking about the Indiana Department of Child Services and how we work and serve our older youth. We first want to look at our older youth services. These are services across the state that help our young people with independent living. We contract with service providers who work with young people on housing, education, employment, etc. Then we want to look at our older youth case management. Case management is a set of activities that our state employees use and do with our young people to help them navigate their time in care. So these are activities that are federally based that we need to be compliant with, such as hosting a youth-driven child and family team meeting or making sure our young people have the adequate supports and services that they need in place. So these are the two components that are surrounded with practice and policy. That's federal policy and state policy. Let's look at older youth services, and we really want to specify exiting foster care. Older youth services and doing a presentation on that could be a 2-day event, the way that we serve older youth. So I really want to think about exiting foster care. And first, that starts with a youth-driven child and family team meeting. That starts at age 14, and it reviews every 6 months until the youth exits care. Now, exiting care could look many different ways for young people. It doesn't always have to mean APLA or leaving care by aging out. There's reunification, there's guardianship, there's also adoption. So we are always planning with that young person beginning at the age of 14 to make sure they understand what their plan is, their role in that plan, and we also want to hear their voice. What are your needs? What are your service needs? That is also older youth services, independent living, as well as community-based services. Also, during the youth-driven child and family team meeting, youth are able to have their own supports there. We call them youth adult representatives to help the young person as they are trying to advocate for themselves and use their voice. That person can be there to help support them, to help them articulate their needs during that child and family team meeting. We all know that when you're in a room full of people, it's hard for our young people to really articulate what that is that they really want to do, what they want in their life, and how they feel about their plan. And so that youth adult is there to help support that young person. Also during the transition plan, the child and family team meeting, the staff also will work on the transition plan for successful adulthood and the transitional service plan. These plans are worked on a little bit later, but they are all federally required plans. So let's talk a little bit more about those plans, because those two plans, the transition plan for successful adulthood and the transitional service plans, are the plans which help the young person, if their plan is to age out of foster care, these are the two plans that are going to support the young person and help the young person navigate what their needs are as they're looking to transition out of foster care. The Transition to Successful Adulthood Plan starts at the age of 14. We at the Department of Child Services are working with the young person. What are your independent living needs? What are your skill base? How can we help you as you're emerging into adulthood? What are those skills? As parents, we always are asking our children, where do you want to be? What do you need to get there? We are doing the same thing with the youth here with the department. Where do you want to be? How can we help you get there? And that is done at the age of 14 and every 6 months until that youth plan has been, until they exit care. And then we have what is called the Transitional Service Plan. For young people who are going to age out of foster care, 90 days before their 18th birthday, we're working with that young person, looking at their transitional needs. What do you need to transition out of foster care? And how can we make that successful for you? We're looking at the same things. What are your transitional needs? How can we make that sustainable? Do you have your vital records? What is your housing going to look like? What is your transportation going to look like? Do you live in a community that doesn't have adequate transportation? And we need to try to figure out how can we get you to work? How can we get you to school? Those are the things that we're looking at. Employment. What do you want to be? What is it going to take for you to get that job that you want to work at, right? So we are looking at that in a transitional way. Again, thinking about what are the outcomes are going to look like when a young person exits care and they're on their own. And that happens 90 days before. And the youth is a vital part of that plan. I heard you all talk about Youth Voice. Youth Voice has been an intricate part of the DCS system with working with older youth since 2012. And so we always want to make sure that that young person knows what they want to do. We're asking questions, and we want to make sure they have a vital voice in their plan. Also, when you think about young people exiting care, we also want to look at the court process. So young people here in the state of Indiana at the age of 14 have a right to know what court hearing they're going to, be explained what the court hearing is going to be about. Young people also have a right to write their own court report, and that court report be sent to the court, and they have a right to speak with the judge or have their voice heard in court. We at Department of Child Services are ensuring that young people do go to court. They are able to speak to the judge. They are able to speak, and their voice sometimes also lifted up by their CASA. So we wanted to make sure that you are aware that that does happen. And also, when it comes to a case closure, the court has that makes that final determination. So we at the state may recommend case closure. We may advocate for case closure with that young person, but ultimately it is up to the court's ruling as to whether or not the youth case closes, especially when it comes to aging out of foster care. So older youth services, another component. As I stated before, that is our independent living services. These are the services that are provided by our older youth service providers that help the young people with their skill building, help them get stable, help them have positive outcomes as they're looking to emerge into adulthood and age out of foster care. Young people in the state of Indiana are eligible for our older youth services program if they are in out-of-home foster care, and it begins at the age of 16. And they can receive those services up through case closure. And then we also have a aftercare program, which we call voluntary services. And that is for young people at the age of 18 and older. And it is a set of supports that help young people navigate, or young adults navigate their environment, their world, when things get a little hard for them. They can always come back interchangeably and work with our service providers. Older youth services here in the state of Indiana is seen as a continuum of care. We have our basic independent living services program that is for any young person in the care of Department of Child Services. No matter what their case plan goals are, they should be receiving independent living older youth services to help them with their skill building. Then we have a new program, which is called Transition to Successful Adulthood Services. And those services are our transitional services. They help young people and young adults as they're looking to age out of foster care. They're giving them the intensive case management, intensive skill sets. We're working on every portion of that young person's transition. We're looking at each aspect of the outcome goals that we have here in the Department of Child Services: housing, employment, education, health and wealth, finance. So we're helping young people navigate that, those independent living skills. And then we have our collaborative care program, which is Indiana's extended foster care program. Extended foster care began at 2012 here in the state of Indiana. Indiana was one of the first states to begin extended foster care. And it allows young people who haven't quite finished their independent living goals and skills, and they still want some more time in care. It allows that young person to be able to opt in. We'll talk about that in a minute. Opt into foster care, back into foster care and placement and services. Our extended foster care, you have to be eligible. These are federal requirements. A young person has to either be working 80 hours a month. The young person either has to be in school or post-secondary program, so that's your college, a career vocational program, or the young person can be participating in a service that helps barriers to employment. And also, if a young person for some reason is unable to meet those first three requirements because of a mental or developmental disability, then they are also able to participate in our extended foster care program. And then again, we have voluntary services, a continuum of care. All these programs are seen as safety nets for our young people as they navigate the child welfare system and plan to exit care. So I gave you I already gave you that high-level description of each of the programs, so I won't go back through them again. But those are, again, our services that we have all four. I want to talk to you a little bit about the term opt-in, opt-out. I've heard that term being used a lot. It is not necessarily a term that we here in the state of Indiana use, but it is a term that can be used and has been used. It is mostly used with our extended foster care program. Young people can opt in to our extended foster care program, collaborative care. It is a voluntary program. It is a court-ordered program. A young person who chooses to opt into collaborative care signs a voluntary collaborative care agreement, and the court does then approve that agreement, and the young person then opts back into care. The great thing about our extended foster care program is that we do have young people who exit care at 18 and decide, guess what, I am done. And maybe a year or two later, life gets a little challenging and they need additional support. We have a reentry program. So young people can re-enter foster care even after they have exited care at the age of 18. That is the great thing about opting in and opting out. Continuation of services is what we primarily use because we do want young people to continue their service delivery, and we do want young people to continue on in foster care after the age of 18. There is the ability to do that here in the state of Indiana. We call that Transition to Successful Adulthood Services. Our new program is open to all of our young people in care, and that is when young people turn 18 and they continue on with services as they're trying to meet their independent living skills and goals. So we use those terms, but we really use continuation of services. That does not require any court intervention because we're not closing out a Chin's case and opening a collaborative care case, which is what happens when you opt in and opt out of our extended foster care program. I want to go back a little bit because that's a lot of information, but I really want to explain to you how this works. Maybe I can get back here. Yes. Okay. So I'm going to tell you a story about a young lady named Anissa. Anissa entered care at age 10. And by age 16, her plan was reunification. And something happened, and she just wasn't aware why she couldn't go home. But all of a sudden, her plan changed to APLA, exiting care, aging out of foster care. And this is how our program works. And so at age 16, Anissa was receiving independent living services. And at age 14, she started having what was called a youth-driven child and family team meeting. And she really didn't know what that meant, right? A lot of people are talking, what do you want to be? What do you want to do? But Anissa hung in there. Anissa was doing great. And now she has to age out of foster care. And nobody had really ever asked Anissa, what does that mean? What does that look like for you? Because Anissa was doing a great job. And so Anissa just went ahead and did everything her service providers wanted her to do. She never caused a problem. She did it just right. And then all of a sudden, something happened. And now there's change within Anissa. And so now Anissa has to think about is getting all this feedback. You used to do this and you used to do that, and what's going on? And she can't really tell you, because what we do know is that the adolescent brain and that information about the adolescent brain, young people are steady growing and developing, right? And so she really doesn't know, but people continue to ask her a lot of questions. And through those questions, she's starting to get a little bit what some people like to say rebellious. But we say sometimes it's just the effect of trauma that happens to young people as they spend 10 to age 16 in care, and now they have to age out of foster care. And so as she's doing that, because she began to be a challenge, now her case is closed. She turned 18 and her case is closed. The wonderful thing about the state of Indiana is that although a young person may have those challenges, and there may be many reasons why a young person's case closes out at 18 or a little bit older, the beauty is that she has supports in place. She's able to utilize her essential connections. And she knew that in order to get the things that she needed and wanted out of life, she needed to come back into care. And she was able to do that through Indiana's extended foster care program. And she came back. She completed her transitional goals. She went to college. She graduated. She was also able to participate in voluntary services once she turned 23. And at age 23, she was able to then exit care. She wasn't all the way there, but she had just a little bit more supports, a little bit more guidance, a little bit more things that she could use in her toolbox to help her become a healthy and successful adult. So that is Indiana's older youth system. Any questions?
Rep. Devon?
Thank you for that report. How old can you opt in? What's the oldest you can opt back in?
You can opt back in, really depends on each young person. So we've had young people opt back into our extended foster care as early as 20, like 6 months before they turn 21, depending on the needs of the young people. We've had young people come back. They've been away from services for a long time. And when age 20 came, they found they needed some support.
What's the maximum age, though, that you could opt back in? Do we have that?
20 is the maximum age because the extended foster care ends at age 21. So 20 in 6 months, we have had young people do that.
So how many kids do we have in foster care right now? Do you know?
I don't have that data specifically of how many kids we have in foster care. We do serve with older youth services, and that's young people who participate in our older youth services program. We've served over 3,000 youth in our older youth services programs, but the total number of young people in care, I do not have that information today.
I mean, it'd be good for future,
Mhm.
this data to have, just to know, and like maybe over the last 5 years, what is the number and how many are aging out and at one time and for those services that might need to. And I just had another quick question. When I was 14, I didn't know what I wanted to be.
All right.
When I was 50, I didn't know what I wanted to do. But so how do you get with these kids that really give them direction, right? So when you're pressing them to know what they want to be and they're like, I don't know, what's my options, right? So how
Right.
do you work how do you work with that?
So we use a formula called authentic youth engagement, right? And so with authentic youth engagement, we are lifting up young people through youth voice. We understand the research around adolescent brain, and we also know that a young person at age 14 won't know what they want to do. It's our job within the department to ensure that we are giving young people opportunities, access, and support. A young person may want to be a doctor 1 minute and then 2 months later, oh, I just want to be a veterinarian, and that is okay. We allow young people, as parents do, to make those choices sometimes and give them guidance. We also need to let them know that there are consequences to some things that young people that they may do, but it's not an expectation that a youth at 14 or even at 18 would know exactly what they want to do, but it's our responsibility to put them on the path of, if you want to be a doctor, you need to make these grades. You need to complete your 21st century task, scholar task. You need to attend school, not skip. You need to go. So it's giving them the opportunity and options to know what they want to be, and then giving them access to the information, the people that can support them through that process, making sure that they have at least one caring adult. What we know by the research is that at least if a young person has at least one caring adult in their life, that they can make positive outcomes and positive changes. So I don't want to have everyone think that it's just we got it under control and the young person's going to make their decision right then and there, and that's going to be the end of it. No, we work with young people individually. It's an individualized plan. We do no cookie cutter approaches.
I know a lot of the kids that I've spoke to, when they're younger teens, they all want to be NBA ball players, right? So it's like, when that knee blows out, what are you going to do, right?
Right, right. And college is great. We also look at vocational skills as well. If you are not college ready, or if college is not the plan for you, then there's also vocational and career goals that we use right on our state website. We go and we utilize career assessments. We make sure young people are aware of the different skills, service skills out there and what they may need in order to achieve those goals. So it's both ways, again, an individualized plan. But I will say that we do have young people who have graduated from Purdue, IU. They have been, one of our young ladies was a student president of Purdue several years back. We have young people advocating, whether they went to college or not, on a national level. We've had young people speak federally and within the state as well. So our goal here in the state of Indiana is to make sure that young people have the skill sets they need to be advocates, whether it's for themselves or for their peers as well.
Yes, Senator Donato.
Thank you so much for your presentation. I find it very enlightening. Is 21 a hard stop for special needs individuals or not?
So the age of 21 is a hard stop in terms of our federal policies. So federally, 21 is the age in which we can provide case management internally within the department. 23 is the hard stop for service delivery. So we can provide services for young people when they exit foster care up to the age of 23. Now, when you talk about a young person with developmental disabilities or any kind of either medical challenges as well, it is our job to partner with other agencies that are going to be that agency that's going to work with that young person or young adult for the rest of their life. So we are putting in long-term supports for that young person, whether it's BEADS or some mental health services for that young person so that voc rehab, if you will, so that once they do exit care, they are able to continue to have adult support from another agency, because that really is the agency that's going to support that young adult long-term. It will not be DCS. And it's our goal to make sure that those agencies are in place so young people know where to go and have that agency support at the time that they are exiting care.
Sarah?
Yeah. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Great presentation. I think we have a fantastic continuum of care, especially for our youth who are aging out of foster care. But I worry a little bit about our juvenile justice involved youth. When you think about the definition of foster care, right? And the federal definition, it excludes our youth who are in DOC or in detention. And so I think the commission, we probably need to think about that as we look at strategic goal number 4, to make sure we can build our continuum of care for that population too.
Mhm.
But I just want to confirm that's a federal rule,
That
correct?
is a federal requirement,
Okay.
yes.
Thank you.
Yes.
Other questions for Anissa? I have a few regarding collaborative care.
Sure.
As a judge in Grant County, I got to see collaborative care review hearings a lot, and they were some of my favorite things to do because these were youth who had chosen to remain in the court system, if you will. And they were often youth who were very motivated to become helpers. So to go into the social services field, to go into helping professions and give back for everything they had received. And that was so inspirational to see in these young people to have that motivation, much like our young ladies sitting here today. But I suppose I always regretted that there weren't more of them. And so my thought was always, if I know I can get help with my rent, help with my tuition, help getting on my feet, why am I not choosing to do this program? And so similarly to that, last year, a group of judges had listening sessions with parents, foster parents, and youth who had been in the system. Jada was one of those youth in our listening session. But one of the themes they talked about and they raised was collaborative care. They felt like youth don't have a good understanding of what that is, and they didn't hear about it until they were on the eve of aging out. And so can you explain how that's presented to the youth and when on this continuum they hear about it for the first time?
Okay. So broad spectrum here. When a young person enters care or starts ODU services, they should be hearing about services from day one. Here is what is available to you when a young person starts ODU services as you look at the continuum at age 16. If the goal is for that young person to age out of foster care, then we, again, opportunity, access, and making sure young people understand what supports and services are available to them. So at age 16, they should be aware that here are the programs that are available to you. Whether you continue on with transitional services, which I will say that that program does allow for a young person at the age of 18 to continue on with services and also utilize those alternative housing options that are under our extended for our collaborative care program. So a young person that is in transitional services can also move into their own apartment, stay in a college dorm, be in a host home once they reach the age of 18. So that is that catch-all for young people who are not quite ready to go into our collaborative care program. And then once they are ready, they can then move into that if they so choose. But that information is provided to young people at the age of 16, once they start services and they're having that youth-driven child and family team meeting. We are constantly supporting young people and letting them know, here are the options for you. And what would you like to do? Now, I would say that with the building of our transitional services program, that is that catch-all, because what we really want to see collaborative care not be as intensive as it is right now. We would like young people to be in collaborative care to get the extra support that they need, but not the high level of intensity services that is happening right now under collaborative care. That should be happening under our Transitional to Successful Adulthood Services program, that high level intensive programming, so that when a young person does come into collaborative care, they are finishing up, if they so choose, because it is voluntary. And a lot of young people, they have reasons, want to exit care a lot sooner, right? So the beauty of collaborative care, you can re-enter. So we have built a program because we were seeing in the past, a lot of young people being driven into collaborative care that may have not wanted to. Now, we hopefully with the current structure that we have, young people will have more of a voice and understanding of whether or not they would like to participate or opt into collaborative care. It is still a beautiful program that we have here. We would like to see it be utilized a little differently, because those intensive services will now be provided under our Transition to Successful Adulthood program, the high level intensity work that the young person needs to do in order to age out successfully or somewhat successfully.
One other clarification. I heard you today use the terms collaborative care and extended foster care
Mhm.
interchangeably.
Mhm.
So does collaborative care now only include foster homes, or does it also include the independent living apartment,
Mhm.
that sort of situation?
It is so extended foster care, collaborative care is Indiana's extended foster care program. So I do use them interchangeably, because I want to make sure everyone knows that collaborative care is Indiana's extended foster care program. And so that collaborative care and extended foster care are both the same, and they have those alternative placements such as an apartment, dorm, host home, that can be. I just use them interchangeably so my audience will understand that it is the same program. And in some readings, you may read about extended foster care, and you may wonder, well, does Indiana have an extended foster care program? Yes, we do, and it's called collaborative care.
Any other? Yes.
Yeah, I have a question. It's actually a two-part question. The first part is, has there been any conversation around the youth that are in DOC who, previously they were in foster care, but once they go to DOC, they now are not with DCS no more. And so we have a lot of young people that are placed in DOC and they've successfully completed the program, but because they don't have any guardian or anything like that, they're basically just being held still there
Mhm.
after successfully completing the program. And then the second question is, for the young people that are in DOC, we have youth that have successfully completed the program that may not have been in DCS, but if their parents are refusing to come pick them up. And so what happens is when the hotline is being called, because they are not homeless per se, it's kind of voided out. And so those are the two concerns from the DOC perspective, that we do have a lot of young people in Indiana who are successfully completed the program, but they're still being housed because there's nowhere to go.
I understand. So I can only give you example of your first question. We have had young people who are duly adjudicated CHINs and DOC. And so what we have done in the past is that when we have had a young person who completes their DOC goals, we have worked with probation to understand that in order for that young person to go into our collaborative care extended foster care program, they need to be in a federally recognized foster home. So if that young person's 17 and a half, we have had young people who have went into a foster home or out of DOC into a group home setting of some sort, so that when they turned 18 in a federally recognized foster home setting. That is a federal requirement. That our state cannot do anything in terms federally to remove that requirement in order to participate in the collaborative care program. We have done that in the past. We've worked with staff to make sure that young people are getting into foster care placements before they turn 18 so that they will meet that goal of being able to be eligible for collaborative care. What was yours? Can you explain the second question?
The second one is basically when they're being neglected as far as parents refusing to pick them up.
Mhm.
And I think in reference to the first question, probation a lot of times, even currently, is refusing to pick up the case. So that's there, but I guess the big question is like, how do we get out of that particular situation and move forward? Because there's several kids that are in DOC now who have successfully completed.
That's a kind of that's a systems question. Yeah, I don't know that DCS could be the answer to that question fully. I think that's a question where all systems have to work together in order, if we see there's a need, then we all as a systems have to work together to try to figure out how to meet that particular need. DCS can only work within the bounds that we are able to work under. And so even when it comes to young people who are in DOC and are not truly, do not have a CHINS case or CHINS, there is nothing at that point DCS can do unless we follow the letter of the law and call in a hotline report to report child abuse or neglect. So that's then when DCS is able to enter in to help affect some change within that youth life. But where I see your questions and thoughts around the need are more systems-based, and it's going to take more than just DCS as an agency. It's going to take us all to be able to really fulfill the need that you are talking about today. But I do see as a need, and where we can help and assist, we have.
Director Krupp?
Hi, just two comments. First, I just want to tell you did a great job representing us proudly at DCS, so thank you for your
Thank you.
presentation today.
Thank you.
And then second, Representative Devon, I just wanted to go ahead and answer your question. These numbers change monthly and they'll be updated probably tomorrow. But the most recent data is roughly 3,500 youth in traditional foster care, and then about 5,200 in kinship placement. Right? If we look at our total CHINS cases
About 9,000
population.
total.
Sorry?
Say about 9,000 total then?
Yeah, so totally across state lines, I mean, we actively have 13,500 CHINS cases. So if you break that down to, in-home versus out of home and then residential, but your question specific to foster care, I'd say 3,500 traditional and 5,200 are in kinship placement.
Thank you. Can you explain the federal guidelines for an approved foster care versus, is it different between the state and the federal as far as their standards?
The
do we have
state
a state?
follows the federal guidance with foster care. So I can speak to you on the Social Security Act of 1999, which
don't need to get
I'm like, I could go there, but I don't want to.
We don't have all day, but
So just to give you a high level view of that, Indiana and all child welfare agencies follow the state guidance on foster care. Extended foster care is a federal guidance in which our state, as well as other extended foster care states, follow as well. So these are federal policies that then the state puts in place. Each state have the ability to develop their own programming around that, but it's the first federal oversight.
thanks.
Bernice?
This is not necessarily a question for the speaker, and you've done a great job and been really informative. I appreciate that. I just wanted to mark, I don't want to lose DOC's comments or concerns, and I didn't know as a placeholder what's appropriate, if it's maybe a recommendation that those concerns be maybe assigned to the juvenile justice or cross systems to examine, since I think all the relative people, to your point, it's a systems problem, and it's going to take a lot of collaboration and people to work together to address it, to look at the extent of the questions. So Judge, I just wanted to bring that up so we didn't lose the concerns raised.
Thank you, Bernice. And related to that, I wrote down Sarah's comments about youth justice, youth being treated differently on the continuum of care. So I do think both of those topics should go to one of our work groups, and perhaps in strategic planning, we can figure out who has been discussing that and who is best equipped to study the issues. I can tell you on the youth justice side, youth justice oversight committee side, there's been a little bit different conversation than in the transitional services work group, looking at those youth returning to the community from the Department of Correction. And there's sort of a patchwork practice across the state of some courts resuming jurisdiction over those youth, and other courts saying, no, we choose not to resume jurisdiction, and that can make a difference in pay source. And each of those practices has arguments for and against. So there's been sort of a debate among courts around the state on that issue, but I do think we can do better, certainly. And I want to also point out that I feel like DOC does a nice job of trying to engage parents. And I've seen those unfortunate circumstances where parents may not engage ever, or they are engaged until it's time to pick up the youth. And then they say, I didn't want to tell them before because I didn't want them to be disappointed, but they're not coming home. And that is the worst, absolutely the worst, to have a youth who's worked really hard and done everything they need to do, and then parent or guardian says, we're not bringing them back into our home. So the DOC folks have a really tough job with these youth, and as do the DOC folks, because these children have been through many, many different traumas, and we have service providers who are doing everything they can to boost the resiliency of these kiddos so that they have every opportunity for success. So to the extent that this group can mobilize and provide supports for the people on the front line doing this hard work, I think we definitely need to do everything we can. Any other questions or concerns? Excellent presentation, Anissa.
Thank you.
All right, so might I suggest, Mark, that we put these two topics on the executive committee discussion?
Yeah, and I can note too that both of those topics were discussed during the strategic planning. So there are plans making sure that that's an objective within that. And I know the YGOC has a portion of that, but the Children's Commission, I think, can do more of the deep dive, and if there's a need for legislative support, et cetera. So absolutely.
All right, and that brings us to our executive director's report. So Mark, very fresh from vacation, is ready to go.
Very fresh and jet lagged by about 3 hours. So take it as you may, but it was just Vegas. No fun to be had there. So that's right. They changed their slogan. So what happens there apparently doesn't stay there anymore. So nobody check. All right, so just a few things I want to cover. It looks like we'll be getting out a little bit early today. I don't see anybody getting ready to protest that, so that's a good thing. But I just want to do a quick review of our legislative affairs process that we created a couple of years ago, especially since we have a couple of items we've talked about today that could fall into that range. Obviously, our first recommendation that we approved there, that's something that would become a commission supported piece of legislation directly. So that is one of our multiple buckets of how we get involved. So that one will be shopping amongst our legislators here to see who's interested, or their colleagues that might be interested, and then we'll get that turned into where we have somebody carrying that piece of legislation forward. And I would be working directly with that, testifying in support as we go through. So since that's gone through all of our channels front and back, that's something that we're comfortable saying, that's one that we're going to just do what we can to get across the finish line. I'll update the commission, of course, throughout the process of where it's going, other support we need, if there's another agency weighing into it that would be helpful, et cetera. So that's our big one, where we usually have the smallest amount of bills involved in it because they're ones that have gone directly through our process. We had a couple last year as well that were more about forming the next stages of our youth and family voices and working with the Youth Justice Oversight Committee in that realm. So after that, we have several other buckets that legislative affairs can fall into. We keep a very active and very large bill watch, just like most folks do. So At the start of legislative session, we'll have that usual pile of a few hundred bills that are on our list of maybe there's something there. Maybe it'll be a live moving bill, maybe it won't, but we're going to keep an eye on it. So that's just an internal tracking that we do. We also publish that publicly, very clearly noting, saying these are just issues that the public might be interested in that do relate to Hoosier youth. So you'll see that. But then for ones we get more directly involved in, we've got some very specific rules of how we do that. So we have bills for potential action that usually we look at and consider if we have legislative language in front of us at the December meeting for bills that maybe didn't start with the commission, but are a good match for our priorities that we've had some discussion about. Those are ones I bring to the commission and say, what do we think? Are these ones that we're okay watching more closely and potentially interacting with? There might be forms of letters of support or going and testifying on them. Note there will be nothing I testify on in support unless the full commission has endorsed it as something that we're going to support. So otherwise they'll just be neutral, factual information. Things that would go under that, we talked a little bit today about older youth services. There might be legislation that comes along on that. That would be one that I'd come back and say, okay, it looks like we actually have some draft legislation coming along. What does the commission think? Are we just watching this? Or do we feel like there's some room to interact with it and add our expertise to the discussion there? I think last year we also had one on establishing a fund for problem-solving courts. That was just an empty fund to hold opioid settlement dollars and rollovers and other things that might go in there. To say, okay, would that be one that we'd be okay with? And again, if we don't have time for the commission to say, yes, that's great, we love that one, then any testimony that I would offer would only be one that would be neutral, factual ones that our executive committee would clear if it's after the December meeting, but before we meet again in February. So there'd be nothing that has our name attached to it without that full permission. We also have previously supported issues. These are almost always going to be ones that are within our task forces. So if one comes up on bullying prevention, I would go back to our task force and our executive committee and say, does this match where our discussions have taken us as far as things that we're okay with diving into a little bit more deeply? We've already said, yes, this is a priority item for the commission, or it wouldn't be under one of our task forces. But again, same rule apply that I don't go in and support any piece of legislation without having the affirmative of the entire commission to do that. And it's actually very rare that I would speak or ask you to say this entire piece of legislation, because believe it or not, sometimes legislation changes during session. Sometimes in ways that we did not anticipate, sometimes into very new things. I know our legislators are shocked by this. So, okay. So usually I'll come back and say this element of the legislation, this piece of language within it, are we okay with this? Just because there's so much change and amendments and things that happen that we want to keep our focus very clean and clear as far as what we're representing and endorsing. So other than it being, this is a commission authored piece of legislation that really comes through us, like we have with the Juvenile Justice and Crossing Systems Youth one from earlier, it's rare that we'd say this entire piece of legislation, all us, talk to us about it, we know everything about it, because that's not often going to be the case. So those are kind of the ranges that you'll see things going into. And if you have questions or if something comes up during session or before session or anything else, feel free to bring that to me, bring that to our chair, and then we can take that and route that through the channels that make sense. Most important is the timing. We have a short session coming up in front of us, and those go so quickly. They're over before we realize it. So the December meeting will be important to say ones that we know we have some language to look at that is coming forward. I'll do my best to have that gathered and have some good information up front of you to at least say this issue, this part of this issue, we're okay with supporting.
I just wanted to say, because it is a short session, is what we doing necessary? Okay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it does make it more difficult for us to get that full level of endorsement on things, but it's also, that's something we don't rush into or take too lightly either. And of course, all the time we get people just asking and pulling aside and saying, how does the commission feel about this issue, that issue? So it at least gives me those marching orders of if it's within our task forces, I can say we're tracking that, working within our task forces already, those general issues. Or I can say we're just watching that bill right now. We don't necessarily have a place to jump in. And it's tough because every single issue that impacts kids, we'd love to say that we have skin in the game on. But we need to be mindful about, do we have the expertise? Do we have the background on that? Our presentation today on older youth services gives us more of the background to say like, okay, now we have, if we were to jump in on that, at least we have a level set. We know where we're starting at, what information we have. We know who to talk to if we have more questions, and we can go forward with that. But otherwise, we're pretty cautious on those things going in. Every now and then there is that surprise bill that gets introduced. We're like, oh, wow, that's a direct match for us. Nobody talked to us about it. We didn't even know that one was coming. That one looks great. If we see that, that's where I go to the exec committee and say, hey, this one came forward. It's between our commission meetings. Are you okay with me elevating this one a little bit? And at least if I were to testify on it, it would still be neutral and factual, but say this is an issue that definitely looks as an issue very important to the commission. And we would love to see what comes out of this bill's discussion. You can see I have immediately after that on the list too, our meeting dates, because that's where we get to talk about if we want to tweak any of the potential meeting dates for next year based on that legislative calendar. So, but any questions on the process? And we do have that in written form, so I can attach that when we do our post-meeting announcements and everything too, so you can look at what that is. Basically, it says Mark can't just willy-nilly go out there and support everything, no matter how good it is. So.
Mark, do you anticipate any of our task force creating legislation?
I think the main one I have is just the one for today as far as the timing that we have to get one there. But we might have some partners that are in our task forces that introduce legislation, and those are the ones that I would ask for them to say, if you can have a draft of what you're proposing by that December meeting, so we can at least have the commission look at it and say, can we get behind this one, or do we need to just hold steady and wait and see?
And so LSAs, would like to get a heads up and jump a little bit quicker, because as we get closer to session date and the filing deadlines, as far as creating drafts and legislation, that way we can tweak it. Even if we got a rough draft, we can get it started within LSAs. Caleb, do you remember what's the deadline date for? Yeah.
And we do have a draft language for the one that did get endorsed today, so we have a starting point on that.
And we are limited to bills that we can file, at least in the House. I think it's 5, maybe 10 in the Senate.
We have 5.
Yeah, we have 5. I didn't know if Senate's 5 as well. They handcuffed you that much? I am, but that's unusual. So, all right, that's interesting to know.
But yeah, we can get that circulated out to our legislators. And again, if there's not room on your list, but you have a colleague that'd be the good fit for that one, whether it's best to start in House and Senate and stuff, that's your expertise that we defer to on that stage.
But if the one's going to go through juvenile, if it's what committee it's going to go to, it'd be good to get a legislator from that committee to maybe carry the bill.
Yeah, absolutely. So immediately after this meeting, I can get that sample language circulated out and we can have some discussion on what makes sense. Great. Great. All right. Any other questions on that?
No, but you let me out this cold.
No, just segue to the meeting dates.
Before we move on to meeting dates, I am aware of one bill that will return. That is a Family Recovery Court Fund bill. And my understanding is that that will be tweaked to include safe baby courts as well. There are a couple of representatives working on that. And if you're interested in seeing the draft language, I can request that they send that for this group to review. Okay.
And I know there's going to be on Org Day a celebration of the Safe Haven baby boxes, a recognition and stuff like that. So if you can attend.
Okay. You have meeting dates in your packet. Go ahead, Mark.
So, and you see them up on the screen as well. So these are ones that we always want to be a little cautious of making sure it makes sense for everybody's calendars. The December meeting, as you can see, our one for this year is December 10th. We are open to if the December meeting for next year, which right now would fall on our usual rotation of the 16th, if we would rather back that up to something closer to the 9th to be not on top of the holiday as much. I think that's something we're open with. We'd also look at the usual rotation for April would have put it a little bit more towards the middle of the month. We bumped that out to the 22nd. The spring judicial conference falls then, and legislators are probably still trying to get over their legislative vertigo from the quick session as well. But it'll give us a better time to give a full final update. Now, February, we have February 18th.
I mean, that might be conference.
Yeah. So we have in the short sessions before, we have bumped February up. We've actually done 1 or 2 weeks, depending on what makes the best sense timing wise for our legislators, especially if we're going to want to say, do we want a final chance to say, actually, now there's something really moving, something shifted around that we want the commission to maybe get more deeply involved in. So do we have any thoughts about that February date?
I feel like there's a lot of school breaks that weekend, right? Like that Monday is usually off, right? So I don't know if that happens. People.
And we're at conference.
You think moving to the 11th would be a better fit? I know, I never know how quick some of the conference committees are going to pop up. It's a fast session. So.
When do you need to know by?
We want to get this circulated as we can, but we can hold on that for at least a couple of weeks. We're looking at February going out there. So it would look like, so I'm hearing we want to go to the 11th or possibly even earlier than that.
I would think earlier would be better because we're gonna be in conference.
Yeah, weighing in.
So looking at the 4th.
What's our midterm break? We might be gone that week.
So is that good or bad?
Yes. Well, and if we did 11th, so that's a Wednesday, and those are usually committee days, so
That can be a little tight too. We've often, the February one, we've had to play by ear once all the calendars are out. So I'm fine holding on the February date for now. But it does look like the September 16th date at the end of the year, we're okay moving that up to the 9th. Get a little bit more freedom pre-holiday there. Okay. And that's puts it in line with what we did for this year too.
I think that every year.
Yeah. That works for me. So any other thoughts on those dates? Any glaring items that we see? Okay, so we'll hold on February. And yes, we've had it before. The February meeting might move to a Tuesday or a Thursday, depending where the committees fall once we have that schedule. So I think we're okay waiting on that once again.
All right, moving on to our last agenda item, which is commission member announcements. So why don't we start with Representative Vaughn this time? Any announcements you would like to make?
that IU is ranked higher than Notre Dame in the football rankings right now, so it's a little perplexing.
No, I do not have any. No, I do not.
I just wanted to share that in early November, IPDC will be having a trial practice institute for attorneys who represent juveniles and delinquency matters. It's a 3-day event. It focuses on trial skills. It will be in South Bend. So I will be looking at Rep. Devon.
When is it?
To maybe come for lunch. Oh, I hate to give you the wrong day off the top of my head.
You can just send it.
But I'll send it to you and Caleb, and no pressure, but it will give you a chance to meet attorneys in your area who are doing this work if you like. And that's all. Thanks.
Since we don't meet again until December, I should point out that we are currently halfway through Infant Safe Sleep Awareness Month, and DCS and the Department of Health are partnering on initiatives to promote more awareness of that and to develop safe practices. And then next month, Since we're not meeting, everybody should be aware. Hopefully many are, but we can never say it enough. Next month is National Adoption Awareness Month. So we will be doing a lot of promotion and marketing campaigns around that as well. Thank you.
I can't compete with that.
Nothing to add.
Not a thing.
Nothing for me.
I have no comments about where Ohio State is ranked currently, but it is not surprising.
All right, with that, we are adjourned. Thank you, everyone.